Good morning to all. Myself Shreyashana, and today we will continue on our topic of the math, which was integers. In my previous video of integers, we had learned how to add integer and what is an integer. In today's video, we are going to learn how to subtract integer, how to multiply integer, and also the rules of the integer. So let's start. Let's start with the rules of the integer. So firstly, the rules of the integers are minus into minus becomes plus, plus into plus becomes plus, minus into plus becomes minus, and plus into minus becomes minus. Now these are the rules of the integer. Then I will tell you how to use these rules in the operation of the integer. But first, when we move on to the subtraction and multiplication, we will discuss that how to use the rules of the integer. But first, over here, you have to learn these rules. Or I can give you a simple trick. What you have to do, you have to just remember that if there are identical signs like this, minus minus or plus plus, it becomes plus. And if there are opposite sign, it becomes minus. It is pretty simple. Let's move on. And I think this rule is now clear to you. Let's talk about the subtraction of the integers. So, which are the possibilities of subtracting the integer? I can subtract two positive integers, I can subtract two negative integers, I can subtract one positive and one negative integer, or I can subtract one negative and one positive integers. So I think that this is clear to you that how to subtract the positive integers, two positive integers. It is pretty simple. Yeah, 5 minus 3 gives me 2, and then you know that all the positive integer, how to subtract the positive integers. Let's talk about how to subtract the opposite sign of the signed integers and also the negative integers, two negative integers. So firstly, here I am telling you how to subtract the two negative integers by the alphabet, so it will be better clear to you. Like take that I have a minus a subtracted by minus b over here is subtracted by from the minus a. Now you can see. What do you have to do over here? You can see that there are two negative integers. How to solve this? Let me tell you. So what happens? We had recently learned the rules of the integers. So we have to apply that rule over here. Let me tell you. So what happens that you can see there is a bracket. And if you will look at the board mass rule, you can see that first we have to solve the brackets. Now in this, how can you solve the brackets? By applying the rules. Let me tell you. So over here you can see that outside of the bracket is the minus sign or the negative sign, and inside of the bracket is also the negative sign. And this bracket, always remember that this bracket means to multiply. If there is no sign, you have to just multiply. So over here minus and minus sign gets multiplied by each other. What does it mean? It means that minus and minus get multiplied by each other and leaves us, at the end it leaves us as the plus. What does it mean? Now it means that the question becomes something like this. Minus a plus b. Because minus and minus sign are just multiplied by each other and forms the plus sign. Next, what we have to do? Now I have to perform any operation in this. What should I perform? Should I subtract or should I add? For knowing this, what you have to do? You have to look at the signs again. Plus sign and the minus sign. Now, plus sign, you have to just multiply these two signs to get that what operation you have to do over here. Now, if I will multiply this plus sign with the minus sign, I will get my answer as a minus. That means I have to just subtract A from the B. What does it gives me? Take any alphabet, because we are not using here the numbers, so we are taking the alphabet. Take the alphabet like C. So after subtracting this A from this B from the C, what I get? From the A, what I get? I get C. Now here you can see that the A is the bigger number. So here the second step comes that you have to put a sign. So now you can see that A is a bigger number and it has a bigger absolute value. That means the sign will be here, will be the sign of the A, which is the negative sign or the minus. What will be my answer? Minus C or negative C. Let's put some numbers on this. Like take for example, I am taking here the small numbers like 4 and the 2. Then it becomes 4 and again 2, and that leaves my answer as 2. What is my answer is? Minus 2 or negative 2. So I think this is clear to you how to subtract two negative integers. Here you can see that. Now let's move on that how to subtract the integers of a positive and a negative. Let's see over here. So like take that plus A minus B, or if you want that minus A plus B. So let's solve this one also. Now over here you can see that we have to solve the brackets, and you can see that the signs are opposite. Now the signs are opposite, that not matter, we have to follow the rule. Here you can see that the rule we have to follow is minus into plus. Minus into plus becomes the minus or the negative sign. So what will be my question look like? My question will look like something like minus A minus B, like this. Now my question becomes something like this. What I have to do next? I have to perform an operation between this A and the B. Now what operation should I perform? Should I add these or subtract these? So for that you have to again look to the sign of the integers. So the two signs over here is the minus and then the negative sign and the negative sign. Now these two negative signs when multiplied gives me as a plus. Now I think that is clear to you. What we have to perform? We have to perform the addition over here. So A plus B gives me AB. Let's take that because we are using here the alphabets. So A plus B gives me AB. Now what I have to do next? I have to put a sign to this AB. So which sign should we put in here? The plus sign or the minus sign? The minus sign, because the greater absolute value is of the A and that carries the minus sign. So we have to put the negative sign. What will be my answer? My answer will be negative AB. And you can also put the numbers in that. So I think that this subtraction is clear to you. At the last of the video, we will solve so many questions. I will try to solve so many questions of the addition, subtraction and also the multiplication. And in this video, we will also learn the properties of the addition, multiplication. So I think this is clear to you. You can note it down also. So let's move ahead. multiplication of the integers. And this multiplication of the integer is so very simple. What you have to do? You have to perform this multiplication in the two simple steps. What are these steps? What are the steps? Firstly, you have to just multiply the two absolute value, the absolute value. What is the absolute value? Just ignore the sign and the number itself is the absolute value. And then you have to just multiply the absolute value. In the second step, you have to put the sign. For that, you will multiply the sign also. Let's take some examples. Now, take 5 minus 5 into plus 3. Let's take this one. So now how can you do this sign? How can you perform this operation? For that, firstly, you have to multiply the absolute value. What is the absolute value? The absolute value over here is 5 and 3. And if I will multiply these absolute value, I will get the 15. So that becomes 50. Now the second step comes. I have to put the sign to this 15. What should be it? The plus sign or the minus sign? We have to just multiply the signs also. So the sign over here is the minus and the plus. Now if I will multiply this minus and plus, I will get the minus. That means my answer will be equivalent to negative 15. You can check it out also. Now I think that you want to learn that why this happens. Why do we get the negative one? Now for looking this, let me tell you. So what happens that you know that the multiplication is a repeated addition. And this means that I have to just add this minus 5 3 times. So, minus 5 plus minus 5 plus minus 5 will always give my answer in a negative, So, that's why the minus, when we multiply the minus sign and the plus sign, we get the minus. And if I will just put the sign opposite, if I will put this sign over here and this sign over here, that means if I will multiply the plus into minus, the repeated addition it is, and the addition, the order of the addition and the multiplication don't matter. The answer will remain the same. So, if I will multiply the plus into minus, I will always get minus. And if I will just change the order of this, that means minus into plus will always give me minus. So I think this is clear to you. So I think now this multiplication is also clear to you. And I think I know that you know about the multiplication of the positive numbers, and we have to just follow the rule, the two steps what we had learned. Just multiply that to absolute value and then put the sign by multiplying two signs or following that rule. That's pretty simple. Let's learn the properties of the multiplication, and then we will solve so many problems of that. So what are the properties of multiplication? So now, in my previous video of integers, we had learned the properties of addition also. The properties which addition follows that. Do you remember the closure property? What is the closure property? Now, the closure property is that if I will do any operation of the math, I will get the integer. If I will multiply or add or subtract integer, I have to get the integer. So that is what a closure property means. That means that the multiplication follows this closure property. Integer into integer gives me integer. It doesn't gives me the decimal or it doesn't gives me the fraction at all. It always gives me the whole number or the integer. Not the whole number, the integer. Now, what is the next property of the multiplication? The associative property. Associative property. And the commutative property. Associative property means that if I will change the bracket of the order, if I will change the order of the brackets, I will get the same answer. And this property is also followed by the multiplication, you know. And also this commutative property. Multiplication is just the repeated addition, and that's why it also follows the commutative property. Now, there is one more property of this multiplication. There is a new property which is the distributive property. It is the distributive property. So what happens in this distributive property? I will talk about this. But firstly, let me clear these three of them. So I think that you know the closure property, you know the associative property, you are clear with these, and the commutative. So let's only talk about the distributive property. So for that, let me rough these three. Now, what is a distributive property? So what happens in this distributive property of the multiplication? So as the name, you can guess that distributive property just means that if I will distribute the number, I will get the same answer. What I mean? Let me take some few examples for this so that you can understand that. Like, let's take the alphabets again. We take that A into B plus C. Like, take that some question is something like this. So now what you can do over here, you can just split this number. What I mean that this question will be equivalent to this A into B plus A into C. That means you can see that the A is the common in the, that means that A is commonly multiplied these two of them. So what can happen in this multiplication, that the B and C could be splitted like this and then added so that we can get the same answer. And I can surely say that I will get the same answer in both of these. Don't believe me? Let's try some examples by the numbers. Like, take the small numbers over here. Let me take my duster. So here let's take 3 into 4 plus 5. So that question is something like this. So I can split this something like this. 3 into 4 plus 3 into 5. What does it gives me? 3 into 4 gives me 12, and over here let me write 3 into 4 gives me 12 and 3 into 5 gives me 15, which basically gives me 27. 27 as my answer, you can see. So over here, if I will do something like this, 4 plus 5 gives me, let's perform this one. So 4 plus 5 gives me 9. 9 into 3 gives me 27. Now you can see that this 27 and this 27 are the same. So that's what a distributive property. If I will distribute the numbers something like this, I will get the same answer. And what if the question is something like this? 5 minus 4. What if the question is something like this? So how can we perform this distributive property? For that, we have to just firstly write this 3 into 5. But over here the sign comes the minus because we are subtracting these two. So we have to just subtract. And the question now becomes something like this. Then let's solve this out. So 3 into 5 gives me 15. Minus 3 into 4 gives me 12. 15 minus 12 gives me 3. Over here you can see 5 minus 4 gives me 1 and 3 into 1 gives me 3. Now you can see that the answers are again the same. Now I think this distributive property and all the properties of the multiplication is clear to you. So let's solve few problems of that. So before solving the problems of the multiplication, I want you to know that the square and the cubes and the raised to the power of the numbers, that let me explain you. So take that I have to multiply this 5 times. 5 into 5 into 5 into 5 into 5. If I want to multiply this 5 times, so I couldn't write this as 5 into 5. It will be the wrong. As you know that if we are repeatedly adding, we can use the multiplication sign to show that. But if I am repeatedly multiplying, what I can use to represent that? For that we use the raised to the power. What I mean, like take that this is a 5. You have to take that number. Which number is multiplying repeatedly? So here the 5 is multiplying repeatedly. That means I have to take the number 5. So I have taken here. And how many times is it multiplying? 5 times. That is, you have to write something like this. How can you say that? This you can say as 5 raised to the power of 5. If it is, take that 7, so 5 raised to the power of the 7. But if there is 2, so we can say that if there is 2, so we can say like this, and also there is a short way to say. We can say that 5 squared. 5 squared. Or if there is 3, 5 raised to the power of the 3. So we say that 5 cubed. 5 cubed. And over here 5 raised to the power of the 3. It is so simple. So I think this is also clear to you. Let's solve some multiplication, addition and subtraction problems. So here with me is a book, and this book will help me to take the questions and solve this with you. So let me take a question from this. We will solve the 3 questions. Multiplication, we will solve the 4 questions. 2 of them is the multiplication question and 2 of them will be the subtraction question. Let's solve that. Let's start with the subtraction, So let me take the subtraction questions over here. Okay. Over here I have some subtraction question, and let me take one. Like here is given minus 12 minus 8 minus 35. So let's solve this question. Over here, let's follow the steps which we have learned. First, we have to break the bracket. For that, we will multiply the 2 signs, which is outside of the bracket and inside of the bracket. Over here is the minus. Minus into minus gives me plus, which becomes minus 12 minus 8 plus 35. Then my next step will be to add and subtract these. So, over here, what I have to do first? No, what I have to perform, which side I have to perform. So let's take this pair over here, you can see. So minus and minus becomes the plus, which means I have to perform the sign of the plus. So this 12 plus 8 becomes the 20. That means, now which sign it will take? The bigger absolute value sign, which is minus 20 plus 35. Then this plus and minus sign becomes the minus, which is we have to perform the operation of the minus. Over here 20 minus 35 or 35 minus 20, because we are not putting the sign. Okay, so we can do the opposite of that also. Now 35 minus 20 which gives me 15. So here the 15, which sign should we put it here? The bigger value sign, which is plus 15, which is my answer. Let's take the second example of the multiplication, and unfortunately the video is getting too long, so I will solve one question of the multiplication only. So let's take the one question of the multiplication, like, let me take the one. Okay. One minute, please. Okay, over here. I can't find any. Okay, I find one, which is the okay. I can't find any questions over here.